how the business on the rural side of the economy is shaping up. We've been talking about that theme for a while now. And ITC as well, with its agri and IT businesses, is essentially focusing on ensuring that they are able to make that transition smoothly, to ensure that there is enough traction that they gain from the recovery in the rural economy. As Sivakumar, who's a group head agri and IT businesses at ITC, joins in with a better understanding on how things are shaping up as far as that strategy goes. Mr. Sivakumar, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks very much for taking out the time. Now, to woo distressed farmers ahead of 2019 general elections, Cabinet has expectedly announced the MSP hike. Does the quantum adequately cover the key agri-commodities and kharif crop basket compared to street expectations?
Yeah, very much. I think the promise was that it will be 50% more than the cost of cultivation, which is both the out-of-pocket cost as well as the family labor. I think pretty much that's how the costs that have been shown in the release and what the price that has been fixed. And in a couple of cases, in fact, it's been higher than 50% also. So I think at one level, that's a expectation that is fulfilled. I think more importantly, what we need to note is in the portfolio of these kharif crops, the higher raise has been given to those crops which are in some sense less water consuming compared to paddy, for example, crops like pulses and the millets, which are now called the nutri-cereals. And that's an important factor because these are all rain-fed and water consumption is also lower. I think that's a signal which is also quite important that we must note. So not only is it generally taken as cost plus 50%, but also the relative increase versus the previous MSPs. This signal, I think, is very, very vital too.
Meanwhile, the MSP hike is clearly in the direction of doubling farmers' income by 2022. All steps taken by the government, do you think, have been satisfactory in this regard?
Yeah, I think if you take stock of what's been announced since the time doubling farmer incomes goal has been set, or in fact even before that, there are three kinds of initiatives very broadly. One is more direct government investments, whether in the form of irrigation through the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, or it is the soil health card scheme, which helps in lowering costs and better deployment of nutrients, as well as the crop insurance through the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Bima Yojana, Fasal Bima Yojana. I think these are certain kind of investments beside the general infrastructure like roads and so on, as well as in the ENAM, which is an electronic market. This is one set of initiatives. The second is trying to improve the market efficiency. The model acts for whether it is for agriculture produce marketing, or whether it's contract farming and services, or it is for the land leasing model act. And the third piece is the subsidies that come in the form of MSP and so on. I think the nature of initiatives that are announced, which will improve both farmer incomes as well as participation of private sector, I think one can't be asking for more in a way. But I think what one should look for is how do these things get more effectively implemented, because a number of these things will have to be adopted by the states, localizing for their requirements, and only then the private sector will walk in, because until then the risks exist, and appropriate implementation even for MSP, which is just announced, that one sees that if there are 14 crops and spread across all the states where these things are grown, how do you expand the outreach in such a manner that every farmer in fact receives this minimum support price, either the market gets raised to these levels or the government purchase happens or a price difference is received, any which way. I think it's more in terms of how do you ensure that these things reach out and deliver the intended results beyond the scheme that have already been announced. I think it's the second step which is as crucial as the first step in all the three different dimensions.
How much burden would MSP hike put on the fiscal? Economists point out that the impact on CPI could be about 50 bips, assuming that the government activity remains strong.
See, the large element of this Kharif crops is obviously paddy. Although it is higher than normal increase that one sees for paddy, it is lower among the basket of crops that we are now seeing, and in fact possibly even lower than what the farmer is expecting. So to that degree, I think it's a well-balanced kind of price portfolio that has been announced. And if you look at the areas where the prices will be lower than these MSPs in the market and where government will possibly buy, it actually won't translate into consumer price, because that interestingly, when the government buys more by putting in more money through MSP, that means essentially it is bridging the gap between a higher farmer price and a lower consumer price, which actually means lower impact on CPI. And where market itself rises to that level, only then it will translate into higher consumer prices. Otherwise, consumer is getting that subsidized kind of level. I think it will be taken in stride between what the market price increase will happen as well as what the government will pay as a subsidy for price difference, if any, are buying directly. So what used to happen in paddy, in rice, will continue to happen, which is not significantly more than in terms of total procurement that the government would do. So I think it is by itself, it is unlikely to be a very significant factor as much as the 50% number sounds more than cost of cultivation, because much of that was already part of the prices either in the market or in the form of the earlier MSPs.
So with normal monsoon and high crop averages, what is your sense on the Kharif and the sowing trends?
I think certainly looking at the sugar experience and outstanding dues of the farmers, a number of measures announced, not just in terms of remittance of the money into farmers' accounts directly, but also in terms of ensuring that the liquidity of the cane processing industry rises, because some of this problem arose because of two successive good crops, and consequently liquidity became an issue as the market also tended to be lower. I think with import duty having been increased and with other interventions like duty-free imports at a later date for a potential export if we can find markets, I think some of these kind of initiatives will also be more a 360-degree approach to ensure that these things get cleared more expeditiously. I think that is something should gear up better. As far as what else can possibly happen, I think one area that was being discussed but I think dropped because not much of joy was found in how to involve private sector in procurement of these MSP commodities. Government can buy some, I think with decentralized state level procurement by the state governments and their agencies, certainly will expand a little bit more. The Bhavantar scheme that we have seen can also expand the outreach to more farmers, but both put together also still is very unlikely to reach the 100% of the farmers. That is the intent. The only way this can really reach out is also supplement with the procurement by the private sector. Some dialogues were held both in the ministry, at Niti Aayog and elsewhere, and I think faster we reach a way in terms of how do we get more number of players involved, the better it would be to really expand the outreach. That I think will be still something which needs to be looked at.
Right. So, Mr. Sivakumar, will this MSP hike incrementally impact the cost of procurement of key agri inputs at your end and pricing at consumer end as well? And if you could also highlight what are the product launches that you've planned this year?
Yeah, I think, where certainly for a vegetable oil industry, it's an important intervention is still required in terms of how much more can potentially be the vegetable oil import tariffs can be raised so that they equalize, the imported oil prices equalize with the corresponding prices that we see in the domestic oilseeds market. I think as those adjustments get made, much like we talked about in case of sugar, then the costing will need to be done by those companies involved in the vegetable oil business or where other forms of vegetable oil is used in other consumer goods. As far as our launch plans are concerned, our more recent entry from the agri business has been in the area of fruits and vegetables. Much of that is not actually covered in these kind of MSP scenario. We have recently launched the dehydrated onions. Onions prices are very low at the time of harvest and farmer is unhappy, and very soon prices go up and the consumers are unhappy. I think the way that can get bridged is through processing. ITC Master Chef dehydrated onions can relatively look at stable prices for the consumers as well as for the farmers. It's found good traction where people who have used. I think our efforts would be to raise the awareness and increase the trials so that the benefit is seen. Not only is it more shelf stable and therefore there is no perishability, but more importantly it also consumes less oil while cooking and therefore more healthy too. So I think these kind of processing led interventions will happen in the area of frozen, both in fresh as well as in processed vegetables as well as in snacks. And fresh fruits and vegetables in the form of ITC Farmland were also something that we rolled out a few months ago. We have done different variants of potato, like the low sugar potato and high natural antioxidant potato, as well as apples from the Indian origins, which are not waxed, as another proposition. So I think some of these are well on their stream, and we are going to expand the rollout over time across the different markets also. I think most of these fruits and vegetables, although occasional government purchase exists, but typically are outside the purview of MSP because government procurement is not easy in these products. I think much of our action is there going forward.
Mr. Sivakumar, great speaking with you. Thank you so much for highlighting really how the MSP hike is going to change life for you at ITC's Agri Division.